All right, we're back for round two of Cypress testing, the SLCSP calculator. And as promised, I have written the second scenario here with which is a two-member household. And we'll look at this in a little bit more detail. But the first thing that I want to point out is, as I kind of referenced in the first video, the initial form was built over a series of days, 4 to 5 days, with really just that most basic scenario in mind. Can I just navigate from page to page? Can I fill in some information? Does it loosely work? And then we go back and we create that first scenario. And as I created this first scenario with all of these assertions, certain things shouldn't be checked, certain parts of the DOM should exist or not exist, I realized that there were pieces of production code missing, certain aspects of UI logic or form validation that were missing from the production code that this spec is meant to test. And so as I was making these assertions, I would have to go back in and fill in production code to make sure that the specs passed and made sure that whatever wasn't correct yet about the production code was fixed. And so generally, the way we describe this approach is test-driven development, is that we kind of identify what we want to test, what we want to be true, what kind of assertions we want to make those assertions, see that they fail, and then add the production code to make them pass. And so that is exactly what I've done with the second, should fill out a form for 2 persons with no change in residence. This is what I've done for the second spec. And just want to show, this is all of the changes. These are all of the changes that were required to make this second spec pass. So with just one additional member, nothing really else was different. So still, not really caring about change of residence or different coverage, aspects of coverage, or even different like birth dates, anything like that. Just, hey, now there's 2 people in the form. These are all of the things that needed to change. And so this is test-driven development. This is what it looks like to do test-driven development, or we might even say behavior-driven development in the front end, and specifically with UI testing. This is not the kind of spec that anyone can write, or even anyone should write after the fact. This is a spec that an engineer should be writing as they are writing production code, and making sure that the assertions are written first and the production code is written second. And all of this was required. Every single change that you see to every single one of these files was somehow required to make those new assertions pass. Okay, let's jump into the spec and check out some new things. All right, so first of all, oh, by the way, we can jump over to the Cypress test. And when we have Cypress tests, we have this list of specs. When this is run in CI, these will be parallelized to the extent that they can be. Otherwise, they'll run sequentially. So the plan right now, I think, is to kind of break each complete flow into separate files. And we have the 1-member household here. Here is the 2-member household, which you can watch. Remember, the first spec took about 2 to 3 seconds. This one is taking about 5 seconds. We'll just refresh it just to give it like the quickest time. Yeah, so about 3 seconds, 3 to 5 seconds. So these will run in parallel, and still the whole end-to-end test suite, should take about 5 seconds, 5 seconds in total. All right. So let's go back to the code and check out some of the changes to the initial spec. I could put these side by side, but I want to make sure that the font size is big enough for everyone to see. So here's spec 2, and at a high level, the thing that's changed is we now have 2 people in the household, and we now have kind of member 1 detail page, member 1 coverage page, and then member 2 detail page and member 2 coverage page. This just makes sure, again, I'm just adding these comments in purely to help people reason about the groupings of assertions, and these are not, really doing anything specific. It's just for readability purposes. And so that's the big change, is now we have 2 people in the form, and so we have to make sure that we navigate, or that the flow of navigation is member 1 coverage, member 1 detail page, member 1 coverage page, member 2 detail page, member 2 coverage page, and still we have this review page and results page at the end. All right. So overall, the things that we're going to assert on, the things that the information that we're going to provide is largely the same, with a few notable exceptions. First of all, when we enter in this 2 into that input field where we say how many people are in your household, we want to make sure that when we enter 2, and then we click the confirmation to say yes, all of these people meet the household requirements, that now we see 2 members appear in the list of people to select. If I had done 20 and sorry, if I had done 20 there, this number would be 20. Okay. There's really not a huge reason to test different numbers. Essentially, whatever number appears there should reflect in the length of the list of household member name inputs. So that's the important connection there. You might say, or someone might say, hey, let's dry that up, or hey, 2, that's kind of a magic number. We could absolutely do some sort of high-level variable initialization, and we could say household count is 2, and then wherever that appears, we could change these to template strings and put in household count, and oops, there we go. Yep. Put that in, and then do the same thing down here, household count. So sure, we could do that. Just double check, like, hey, if we want to have 15 people in the household, then you just have one place to change that. That's okay. I wouldn't necessarily say that was super crucial, but it wouldn't be wrong either to do. And notice that our test still passes, totally fine. The thing about that, though, is we haven't really generalized the flow from member detail page to coverage page to the next member detail page to the next member coverage page. So at this point, and this is how test-driven development goes, we have hard-coded quite a bit of stuff. We've hard-coded the idea of 2 members of the household throughout this entire spec. We haven't just immediately jumped towards some generalized way of moving through this flow. And so there might be a sense, someone might get the sense that, hey, I can just change this to 15 and we're good to go. I change it here and then everything else runs just fine. But in fact, that won't be the case, because first of all, I've only kind of explicitly said, type in the first member's name, type in the second member's name, and look at all of these other people's stuff here. It remains unentered. So that's one danger of prematurely generalizing certain things like this and giving the false impression that, oh, well, up here is my household count, and I'll just change this to 15 and everything else works fine. It will totally break. That being said, let's begin that effort. Let's start and say, hey, maybe we could pull this out. make it its own variable, and reference it elsewhere. And let's just see as we go through how we could do that in an interesting way, or in an effective way. Everything's interesting. All right, so the next thing that we've got here is this new assertion that the member form should be disabled, or the ability to navigate to member details should be disabled until these names are filled in. And you know what? As I'm looking at this, I'm realizing, and I was just looking at the spec, and we can go back up here. Oops. We can go back up here to that this button should be disabled, and then clicking. Whoops. Let's go back up here. That right here at this point, we've entered in the names of the people, but you know what we didn't select is the relationship. And so all of a sudden we're realizing, wait a minute, I did not include that as a requirement to move on from the page. So not only should the button be disabled until the relationship is fixed or entered, that there's some value, but wait a minute, actually, this form should not even be able to move on. And so we're missing a part, we're missing a step. And so let's try to do that in real time. Bear with me, because I'm literally noticing that as I'm recording the video, but that's great. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is go to the member component, the HTML. We'll see that there's this household member component with the valid member detail page. So we'll just kind of split this out. And the things that I'm looking for right now to say that the member detail page is valid, basically it's the whoops, we're not on the member detail page, we're on the household page. Household components, yes. So here we go. Here's what we're looking for. It's the enroll household member name. So member name, we're gonna go over here, and we can see that there is this select element, and it needs to have a value other than select a relationship, or actually the value is null. All right. So what we're going to do is, first of all, go over to the form initialization and double check that where we have relationship, that the so the default household member, their relationship is self, and that's fine. We're going to leave that as is. But for new members, their relationship starts off as null. And since we have the validators are required, what we can do is actually say, if this is not the primary member, grab the form validity of the relationship control and check to see if it's valid. And if it's not, then that continue button should not be enabled. All right. So here we are on the household component. We've got the household member name, and we want to go into the component class. And here's the thing that we're looking for. So the household count is valid. This is what makes the form page valid, able to continue. So we've got the household count is valid. It's greater than 0. The household confirmation is valid, and the household member names are valid. But there's actually a fourth thing. So I'm going to just change this comment to 4 things and say, number 4, the household, let's see, any secondary members have a valid relationship with the primary member. Yes, thank you, Copilot. You're awesome. All right, so here's how we're going to get that. First of all, we're going to say, is this a primary member? Const is primary member. And we're going to say this dot, let's see, do we have a primary member name? We do. Let's get this. So we're going to grab the service, the household member array at 0, get primary member dot value or false. So that just basically says grab the primary member control from the sorry, actually we need to do something a little bit different. This is real time here. real-time programming. Awesome. All right. So the valid household page, any secondary members have a valid relationship to the primary member. So let's do this. Let's get the household members. And, oh, here we go. You know what? We've already kind of set ourselves up for success here. We already have a variable that contains valid names. So every single member has to have a valid name. Let's do this. Let's add to this and member.getRelationship.valid or false. All right. So now what we're saying is, hey, loop through the household member controls. This every is a method that says, pass it in a function, and the function is going to return a Boolean value. And does every single one of these values return true? Then this is true. So whatever assertion is down here, every single one has to be the same, and that is what this will turn out to be. All right. So now what we should get is in our form. Nope, didn't work. Awesome. So let's do this. Let me bring over the SLCSP calculator. So what's cool about Cypress is when you're running it and it's running the end-to-end tests against Cypress, it is also running the application on that same port. So you can kind of do development through Cypress, through that test-driven or behavior-driven development, and also just be running the application on another port. So let's do this. Let's go to 2, yes. And let's see, oops, did not mean to go full screen. Let's just see, as we type in Bob and Susie, yeah, we can see that the continue button is lighting up, even though the relationship has not been selected. So, we need to do a little bit of debugging. All right. There's not, an immediate obvious thing that I'm seeing of like, hey, this is, the relationship is null. So it should start off as null, and the validators say that it is required. So what I might do, oh, you know what? Oh, interesting. I think some of our formatting got a little bit weird. Let's do this. Let's yeah, oh, that's wild. So I think the parentheses just got moved to like the wrong parts of the thing, and this is what it should be. So it's make sure the name is valid, or just say it's false. Get sure the relationship is valid, and say that's false. Let's just double check now. Yes, but let's put 2 in there. So continue button is disabled. That's right. Susie and Bob. Yes. Look, see, the select relationship has not been selected. The continue button is disabled. But now if we do grandparent, hey, there we go. Okay, cool. So we know we've got the code in there. And by the way, I totally should have put in a selector here. But let's make sure that this down here, this continue to member details, let's just get rid of that for now, because again, it's almost like a redundant assertion. And let's make sure, fill in the name of the primary person. Let's do fill in names of household members, and then select relationship between primary and secondary member. Yes. So we're going to say, yeah, that looks good. Select spouse. Let's go over to the actual member name component, because we actually need to put in a data-sci. So we're going to do that. It's been a little while since I did the select method. I think we can put it on the select element itself. And Copilot is doing a great job. It's saying, hey, let's do relationship dash index. So this wasn't correct. Relationship dash index. And the index is going to be, what is the index going to be? So the index is the member of the household. So 0 is the primary member, and everything else down the line is like 1, 2, 3, 4. So the index should be, yeah, we could do that, just plus index. So it would be relationship 1. So it's not the first member of the array, it's the second member of the array, which is 1. And let's see real quick if that gives us what we want. Oh, that went really fast. Great. All right. So that was really fast, but we can go back up and we could just double check. Yep. Select spouse. Did it select the spouse? Doesn't look like it selected the spouse. I think we might have to select something different. All right, so here's a good example of the Cypress documentation. Cypress select option. Select Cypress documentation. Awesome. All right, so select an option within a select. Cool. Sci.get select. Okay, so it is saying the selector that we want to grab. Sorry, I'm saying select a lot. The selector that we want to grab is the select element, so that's cool. Which is what we're trying to do. So that's awesome. And then what are we actually selecting? Is it the value, or is it the word in the list? Because we kind of have some like translations going on over here. And so I think select the user.one option. Let's see if it gives us any. Oh, here we go. So select the option with the text apples. Here's the select element. The value is 456, but look, the word that appears in the list is apples. So are we selecting apples? Yes, we are selecting the word that appears in the list. And then it's saying should have value 456. Oh, but apparently we can also select the value, which is 456. And it should have value 456. So let's do this. I like this additional assertion on here. So let's add that in. So I'm just going to grab this whole thing, and we will put this kind of over here. So we want to grab relationship 1. That's our selector. We're going to, let's get rid of this, and let's honestly just see this fail for a second, because we want to know, hey, we're doing something, we need to have a failing test, and then we need to make it pass. So yeah, there's no select 456. That's not an option. What are the options? Well, there are the words themselves, and let's do like unrelated. Let's do unrelated. And again, there's still that additional assertion in there. So if we, there we go. All right, so it does choose unrelated, but then it wants to make sure that the value itself is unrelated. And so now we want to say that the value itself, which, by the way, tax relationships, these are the actual values that will appear in the select option, or the value attribute for the options. So unrelated is right here. And so we'll put in unrelated. Let's do that. Cool. And it asserted. And by the way, if we did like capital U, that's not actually the value, because case sensitivity is a thing. And so if we try to do that, it would hang on that. So it's selected the right value, but as we assert on it's selected the right option, but we're asserting that it should have this value of capital U unrelated, but that is not the value that it will have. It is lowercase unrelated. And just for the purposes of making this a little bit more realistic, let's select spouse, and let's say that the value should be spouse with a bunch of E's, okay, just to get that to hang, and then the real value should be spouse. Awesome. All right, cool. And the rest of the form goes through. That's fantastic. Let's keep looking through our spec and our assertions. So now we have, we've got all this stuff in, and now we can click. It's fantastic. All of this stuff here is the same, exactly the same from our one-member household spec. Look at this. It's exactly the same. Let's see if I can get it to yeah, look at that. Perfect. Totally the same, 100% the same. Same with the coverage page, exactly the same. We're not doing anything different. However, now we need to go to the member to detail page. And remember I said we have not generalized this flow in the spec. And so we're still just hard coding it. That's okay for now. So we say, hey, member heading should contain tell us about Susie, because that's the name that we entered up here. You might be saying, hey, what if we want to test Suzanne? Okay, sure. Const household member names equals John and Susie. Great. And we can say, instead of John, we can say what? Household member name 0. That's cool. Except it's plural. And then what is this going to be? This is going to be household member names 1, of course. And so wherever we might reference those names, we can change these to template string syntax, and we can put in household member name 0. And the next one should be, let's get rid of that. So now we're saying, hey, the member heading should contain tell us about household member name 0. And what if John changes to Bob? We can do that, and it'll still pass. But I think that might highlight the kind of the arbitrariness of even making that assertion at all, even testing for those things, because as you can tell, if it doesn't matter what name we put in there and we can change it to whatever we want, well, maybe we shouldn't even be testing that because it doesn't really matter. Anyway, let's keep going on. Where's Susie? So tell us about Susie. Change these to template string syntax and put in household member name 1, which is the second element of the array. Great. There's another Susie. Let's put in household member names 1, but of course we've got to change this to template string syntax without breaking things. Okay. And I think that's it. So we should now just have, oh, whoops, we have 2 instances of John. Where's the other one? Here we go. So let's switch this up to household member names 0 marketplace coverage. Just double check as we go along the way that nothing is breaking, that all of our specs still pass. Uh-oh. Tell us about John. Something is wrong. Tell us about John. Maybe there's like a extra curly brace, something like that. Tell us about, yes, I added in a little extra curly brace. Cool. Hey, but the nice thing is now we don't care about what those member names are. This has been abstracted away from the specific implementation. All right, so that's a pretty good example of abstraction. All right, so we've got member coverage page 1, detail page 1. The next thing that we want to look at is the member detail page 2. So for secondary members in the household, currently, this is just the way it currently works, but won't be this way out in the future, is that we don't care, or we don't currently care about the residence of the non-primary members. We're going to use the primary member residence as the residence for the whole household. It just is the way it is right now. And so for Susie, or for household member number 2, we actually want to make sure that the residence form doesn't even come up. And so I could explicitly say something like, and maybe I should do this, is that psi dot, what should we put in? How about this? So on the page, we should say, perhaps, just to be very clear, psi.get should not exist, right? Because, and I'll put in a comment, secondary members are not required to enter residence information, okay? Now, one day, when we add this back in, we want this test to fail, right? We need to change this spec, because someday when the logic, when the UI logic changes, we want to make sure that a failing spec, has some coverage there. All right. Now, to be clear, this click would also not work when that logic changed. So we do kind of already have that scenario covered, just by way of saying, hey, the button should be able to be clicked, and if you can't click it because it's disabled, blah, blah, blah. But this is just a little extra, like just being a little bit more explicit and saying, hey, the zip code input, it should not exist. So do not expect to see it. Okay. Just again, double check. We've got all of our tests passing. And if we don't, why not? Still hung up on tell us about John. Tell us about, yeah. Did I not remove that? I guess not. Just double check that we can get through everything. Cool. Goes to the end and we're all set. All right. So we've got coverage page, sorry, detail page. The detail page for member 2, type in the DOB, don't expect any residence information to show up, and then navigate to the coverage page. This is exactly the same as it was for member 1, because coverage doesn't really matter. Enter in whatever you want. There's not a lot of, there's really no form validation on that. Anything can be checked, some items can be checked, and then go to the review page, and then go to the results page, and that's it. There are probably many other things that we might like to test, and we can probably do those all on our first scenario, or between our first and second scenario. For example, if we were to go back to this page, I can tell you there is a little bit of logic on this page, and I can see that for a secondary member like Susie, it's showing the locations that she lived, but it shouldn't, because she isn't required to enter in that information. And likewise, the marketplace coverage months for both members, it should show something like no coverage or no month selected. All right, we can fix that. Does it prevent a user from going through the whole form and getting some sort of like response from the API? No. And so that's something additional that we can check for and enhance. But this is a good way of avoiding the temptation to make everything perfect the first time around and really focus on the happy path, making sure that the most simple scenarios work and they can get through the form, and then going back through and using test-driven development to say, hey, you know what? Actually, that location lived should not appear for the secondary member. So let's write a failing assertion that says it shouldn't be there. Oh, now it's failing on this page. By the way, it might fail for all of our specs if we were to to generalize that into some sort of like, this is how the form should work, but we're not there yet. In any case, this is okay for now. So I'll stop the video here. But once again, we've got now the second spec working with 2 members of the household. And again, this is all of the stuff that we needed to change, including some stuff that we just went through right while we were on the call, or right while we were on this video recording, trying to get our specs to pass and trying to get them to assert the right things. So I'm going to push this up and commit this, or commit it and push it, and we should see the CI pass this new spec. All right.